Good evening. My name is Les Brown. I've been collecting for a long time. I collect information. I'm not an expert, but I'm not a novice either. And I'm willing to ask a lot of questions if I don't know. I've met a lot of people who collect knots. Mitch Reese. I've met Mike Walton, but I've never met a couple of people who've written the books on knots. The presentation I'm giving is based on that of a beginner. In other words, I'm looking at it that you may be an expert on OA flaps, but you don't know a whole lot about the knots. And so I'm going to try to give you a big foundation in a little bit of time. Scouting has many quasi-military themes. Baden-Powell was a general. The uniforms have been very similar. We have medals and ribbons. Activities include hiking, camping, meeting. The groups like patrols, troops, and there's ranks that are earned. A little history on the knots. They had ribbons in 1934. That's when they first used them. And here's some of the ribbons. They're coming in on the screen right now. The knots started in 46 with some of them starting in 47. There may have been some that started in 1945. The knots that were started in 46 are the Silver Buffalo, Silver Antelope, Silver Beaver, Scouter's Key, and the Training Award. The Honor Medal, the Eagle Scout, and the Quartermaster Award were started the next year. The knots they have different backgrounds, usually to match the uniform, and there's approximately 60 nationally sanctioned knots. The knot background, we have khaki, we have the white, we have the dark blue, we have the dark green, and we have the tan. The older knots, you're going to find four major backgrounds. There's a right twill. If you look real closely at it, you can see that it's going up to the right. There's a left twill. There's just a regular twill. There's a no twill, and finally a fully embroidered knot. The backings, that took a little doing. There's a lot of backings on there. And I didn't realize there was as many as there were. You've got the plain cloth, the gauze back. I try to get the khaki knots with the gauze back. Plastic back, plastic over gauze, some white backing. Then they've got the logos that came out very recently. They've got the one for 2010. They've got a logo white. And then they've got another one called Crestlon, which I don't know if that's the same white backing or if it's something different. Most of the knots now will say the Scout stuff on it. You usually wear the loop. When you're looking at the loop is on facing to the left. And if it's the same color, like the Honor Medal, you still have the loop to the left. And then they've got the incorrect direction. Mike Walton, I met him at the 2010 Traderie in Fredericksburg, Virginia, when I lived back there. He says that there's a loop, and then you've got this, what they call the standing part. The last official BSA recommended sequence was from 1979, and it has the order on which to wear the knots. Other types of square knots. You've got local or council knots, come from the council. The knot that's from Texas, that Rio Grande knot, that purple knot, is also in the Bernie Miller collection. These two, Crowl had in there. And what's interesting about it is the one on the left, the Lincoln Trail medal with the red, I bid on that on an auction a long time ago, and I've only seen that one time. That's the second time I've seen it anywhere. Private issue and spook knots. Private issue knots are knots that people make. Rafi Sharif, he was the most prolific one. He made a lot of them for the Sea Scouts, but I've included a couple of his knots. Sea Scout Ship 90, they have a silver anchor knot. I don't know if that Commander Keen knot is from them or not. I would suspect that it is. I've only seen one Commander Keen knot ever. Unfortunately, I tried to get a hold of these guys. The phone number that I called on the website, the lady said, no, this is not us. So I will have to write to them and see if they have any more. Chris McCullough, who made some knots. There's a couple of them in there. Craig Murray, he made a lot of knots, and then BSA told him to stop. I put these two in here because they talk about that one's the Air, one is the Eagle Scout, and then you have the Eagle Air or not, just in case that somebody out there and they happen to see it. The Antarctica knot, I put under miscellaneous. The Eagle Scout, United States Coast Guard. Len McLeod talks about these knots in his BSA fruit salad. Crowl in his thing had something about the Medal of Merit prototype. I believe that looks like that Lincoln Trail medal, but Roy Moore had that on his website that was a prototype. Then they have spoof knots. The first time I ever saw spoof knots was from Chris Jensen's listing. I also talk about foreign knots. I did include a couple from England, and I included a couple from Canada because England is where scouting was born, and Canada is, of course, close to us. Error knots. These are good ones. In fact, I believe on one of the websites, they post the error knot instead of the correct one. The pro knot, there was something about the first knots and the professional knots. As Richard Shield told me in an email, they called it the funeral knot for some reason because it was real dark. I'm not able to find one of those. I think I've got the right one on there, but based on what he said, but I'm not quite sure. The silver beaver knot on blue, I've only seen 2 advertised. The International Scouter Award, the Spurgeon oversized. The Nisa knot was something that Roy Moore had on his website. The ones everybody chases after. Quartermaster Type 1, Silver Award Type 1, Ranger knot, Ace knot, and our beloved Skipper's Key. Also, a couple other ones. The Speaker Bank knot, which is discontinued, and a Hornaday knot. Mythical knots. The leading question is, do they really exist? One of them is Ranger on Khaki. My hypothesis on this knot is that it is, in fact, a Ranger on Khaki. The color pictures that were sent to me show that the knot the strands are not white, they're yellow. If you look at it, it doesn't look like that anybody dyed it, put some dye on the back of it, because if they did, it would have bled all the way through. Silver Fawn. Len McLeod mentions this in his book, the BSA fruit salad. Crowl had a picture of it, so I included it in there. The next one that I think is the Skipper's Key on blue background. He doesn't think it exists, but there may be one out there. My hunch is there might be one out there, even as a prototype. And the third one is the Ace on Khaki. Art Hyman wrote a book called The Scout in Aviation, and I called him up and talked to him for about half an hour, sent him a check for the book, and he says that he saw one. I think he even had one based on how they used to make the patches to match the uniforms. I think it does exist. I would consider it the holy grail of all the knots. As Mitch Reese told me one time at a trader, get an education, get reference books. The more you know, the better off you are. 2, when in doubt, ask. Is this not a reproduction? Who's got the best references on knots? Has anybody heard of this? The thrill of the hunt. My late grandfather told me it's not always having, but more of the thrill of the hunt that's satisfying in the long run. And this is true. Start small. Buy a few knots that you know of. Usually if you buy a hard to find knot, it's usually considered like the Hornaday or the Silver Award Type 1, or even a Ranger, the first Ranger knot. You're considered a serious collector. Above all, have fun. This is how you make friends. This is how you get contacts. Finally, those are some of my references and a couple of the websites. Any questions?
Wonderful. Were there winter color, like that dark blue color, were there ever twill ones, or were there just felt ones?
As far as I know, there were only felt ones.
One is the Ranger Award on twill. It does exist. I've had one in my hand, and I have had it on display at the museum for a number of years. Number 2, there is a silver fawn knot. It's the silver beaver knot on a gem mother blue. It's really hard to find. I have not yet found one. I need one, but it does exist.
You had a slide there that had the list of the order of the knots, how they go on the uniform.
Correct.
Where is the starting point?
When you're looking at the flap, it would be right on the flaps left.
What about the Antarctica? What is that patch for? Is it for going to Antarctica?
It's not just go down there. You got to be part of an expedition as a scout.
Another question, the merit badge knot, what is that for?
Supposedly it's for getting all the merit badges. From what I remember reading, that knot was made up, I think, in either 2008 or 2013. They based it on the scouting is red, white, and blue. You have the required badges, which have the silver border, and you have the non-required badges, which have the green border, and that's what the colors of the knots are.